Have you ever had a huge dream, but still found yourself lying in bed scrolling on your phone? You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow, you imagine the life you want, but somehow you never quite begin. Maybe you want to start a business, or learn a skill, or change your entire life. Instead, the day passes, and by the evening, there's this quiet feeling in the back of your mind. Why am I like this? If that sounds familiar, you're not alone, because there's a strange psychological pattern that many people live with. They are incredibly ambitious, yet they appear lazy. But here's the twist. People who feel lazy and people who feel ambitious are usually seen as opposites. Yet in reality, many people carry both at the same time. In fact, there are two very different types of lazy people. First type truly lacks desire. They don't really want anything big from life. They are comfortable where they are. But the second type is very different. They have powerful dreams, strong imagination,
big visions for their future, and yet they struggle to move. Not because they don't care, but because something deeper is happening inside their mind. Psychologists have been studying this pattern for decades. One concept that helps explain it comes from the work of psychologist Kurt Lewin, who studied something called approach-avoidance conflict. It's a simple idea. Sometimes the same goal can both attract us and scare us at the same time. We want the success, but we also fear the pressure that comes with it. We want the recognition, but we also fear failing in front of others. So the brain does something strange. Instead of choosing one direction, it freezes. From the outside, it looks like laziness, but inside, it feels more like being stuck. If you've ever had days where you planned everything in your head, but still couldn't start, you've probably felt this conflict. And interestingly, ambitious, lazy people often fall into two emotional patterns. The first type constantly fantasizes about the future. They imagine their success vividly, the job, the recognition, the lifestyle. But imagining it already gives their brain a small reward, almost like a preview of success. So the brain releases a bit of dopamine,
even though nothing has actually happened yet. And strangely, that small reward can reduce the urgency to act. The second type experiences something different. They want success deeply, but they are constantly worried about not being good enough. Psychologist Albert Bandura talked about a concept called self-efficacy. It simply means how strongly you believe you can actually succeed. When someone has low self-efficacy, they may still be ambitious, but deep down they doubt their ability. So instead of trying and risking failure, they delay, or procrastinate, or avoid starting at all. Because not trying feels safer than trying and confirming their fear. And often, these patterns don't start in adulthood. They usually begin much earlier, in childhood. For example, some kids grow up hearing very high expectations. Be the best. Don't make mistakes. Why didn't you get a higher score?
Over time, the child learns something subtle. Success feels good, but mistakes feel dangerous. So the brain develops a quiet rule.
If I don't try fully, I can't fully fail. Other children experience something different. They grow up with very little structure or guidance. They're told they're smart, but they're never shown how to build discipline. So they grow up believing they should achieve something big, but without learning the daily habits that make progress possible. Both paths can create the same adult experience, ambition in the mind, but resistance in action. And the consequences of this pattern can slowly grow heavier over time. Emotionally, it creates frustration. You feel like you're wasting your potential. You compare yourself to people who seem less talented, but more consistent. Socially, it can create distance. Friends or family might label you as lazy or unmotivated. They don't see the inner struggle. They only see the surface. And physically, this internal conflict also affects the body. When the brain constantly holds ambition and avoidance at the same time, it creates tension. The nervous system stays in a low-level stress state. You might notice it as tight shoulders, restlessness, mental fatigue, or that strange feeling of being tired, even when you haven't done much. This happens because the brain keeps processing unfinished goals. Psychologists sometimes call this the Zeigarnik effect. Our minds hold on to incomplete tasks.
They stay open in the background like tabs in a browser. And when too many of these open tabs exist, the brain becomes overwhelmed. Ironically, that overwhelm can lead to even more avoidance, which creates an endless loop. Dream, delay, feel guilty, repeat. But here's something important. People who are lazy but ambitious are not broken. In fact, many of them have something extremely valuable. They have imagination, vision, and sensitivity to possibility. The real issue is not motivation, it's emotional friction. Their mind sees the mountain. Their nervous system feels the pressure. So instead of climbing, it stays still. The solution is rarely about pushing harder. In many cases, pushing harder actually increases the internal resistance. A healthier shift is much quieter. Instead of focusing on the size of the dream, focus on lowering the emotional weight of starting. Small actions calm the nervous system. They signal to the brain that progress is safe, not dangerous. Psychologist B.J. Fogg from Stanford talks about something similar in his research on tiny habits.
He found that behavior change becomes easier when actions feel almost too small to fail. Not writing a whole chapter, just opening the document. Not working out for an hour, just putting on the shoes. When the brain realizes there is no threat, the avoidance slowly fades. And over time, the identity begins to shift from someone who thinks about doing things to someone who quietly begins. No dramatic transformation, no sudden explosion of discipline, just small movement, repeated, until the mind and body stop fighting each other. Ambition doesn't disappear, but it becomes calmer, more grounded, less overwhelming. And that's when progress finally starts to feel natural, not forced. If you've ever felt like a person with big dreams but slow action, maybe you're not lazy. Maybe your mind simply learned to protect you from pressure. And sometimes, understanding that is the first step toward changing it. If this idea resonated with you, you might enjoy more conversations like this here on Mind About People. You're always welcome to stay, listen, and explore the quiet psychology behind how we think, feel, and behave. And if these reflections speak to you, feel free to subscribe, only if it feels right.